Let me ask you something real quick. Have you ever been in a room full of people, everybody's talking, laughing, moving on, and you're just sitting there like, wait, does nobody else see this? Maybe it was a problem everyone ignored, a pattern nobody named, an opportunity that was sitting right there in plain sight. And you felt almost crazy because you were the only one pointing at it. You weren't crazy, you just have a different kind of mind. And today, we're going to talk about what's actually going on inside the psychology of people who see what others don't. Alright, so here's the thing about human perception, and this is genuinely wild. Your brain does not show you reality. It shows you a story about reality. A compressed, edited, best guess version of what's out there, filtered through your experiences, your beliefs, your fears, and your past. Neuroscientists call this predictive processing. Basically, your brain is constantly predicting what it expects to see, and then filling in the blanks. Which means most people are walking around literally seeing what they've been trained to see. But certain people, their filter is different. Their brain doesn't just confirm the prediction, it questions it. And that right there is the core psychological difference between people who fit into the existing picture and people who see a whole new one. The first psychological trait these people share: obsessive pattern recognition. They don't just look at things, they look for what connects things. Where most people see isolated events, they see threads, they see systems, they see the invisible architecture underneath the surface. Steve Jobs talked about this. He called it connecting the dots. He said you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backward. But some people have trained themselves to find those dots faster than anyone else around them. Think about the kid in school who kept asking, but why does it work that way? Not to be difficult, not to be annoying, but because their brain was genuinely unsatisfied until the deeper pattern made sense. That's not a learning disability. That's a superpower. Here's the second trait, and this one might actually surprise you. People who see what others don't, they're comfortable sitting in uncertainty, like genuinely okay with not knowing. Most people, and I mean most people, cannot tolerate ambiguity. Their brain panics without a clear answer, so they grab the first explanation that feels satisfying, the conventional one, the comfortable one, the one everyone else agrees on. But visionary thinkers, they sit in the fog. They stay curious longer. They don't rush to close the mental loop, which means they eventually see options that everyone else already dismissed too quickly. Build energy. Psychologists actually have a name for this. It's called a high tolerance for ambiguity, and research consistently links it to creativity, innovation, and leadership. It's not comfortable, but it's powerful. Okay, third trait. And this one's going to hit different. A lot of people who see what others don't have felt like outsiders for most of their lives. Maybe they grew up in two cultures. Maybe they switched industries. Maybe they were always the weird kid who didn't quite fit the mold. And here's what's fascinating about that. That experience of never fully belonging to one world, it gives them access to multiple frames of reference at the same time. They can code switch between worldviews. They see the assumptions that insiders take for granted because they've never been fully inside. Researchers call this cognitive diversity, and it turns out the people who've experienced the most friction, the most you don't belong here moments, often develop the sharpest ability to see what's missing, what's broken, and what could be completely different. Pain built their perception, and now it's a lens nobody else carries. Now, and I'm going to keep it real with you here, being this kind of person is not all upside, because here's what nobody talks about. When you see what others don't, you also feel what others don't. The frustration when no one believes you, the isolation of being ahead of a conversation by 5 steps, the exhaustion of constantly translating your vision into language that other people can receive. Some of the most visionary minds in history were dismissed, laughed at, ignored, sometimes for decades. Not because they were wrong, because they were early, grounded, compassionate. So if you've ever felt like you were screaming into a void, like your ideas were falling on deaf ears, I want you to understand something. Pause. You're not broken. You're calibrated differently. And that's a rare thing to carry. Now, and I'm going to keep it real with you here, being this kind of person is not all upside. Because here's what nobody talks about. When you see what others don't, you also feel what others don't. The frustration when no one believes you. The isolation of being ahead of a conversation by 5 steps. The exhaustion of constantly translating your vision into little language that other people can receive. Some of the most visionary minds in history were dismissed, laughed at, ignored, sometimes for decades. Not because they were wrong, because they were early, grounded, compassionate. So if you've ever felt like you were screaming into a void, like your ideas were falling on deaf ears, I want you to understand something. You're not broken. You're calibrated differently. And that's a rare thing to carry. So here's what I want you to take from this. Seeing what others don't isn't a gift that just lands on certain people. It's a set of psychological habits, pattern recognition, tolerance for uncertainty, the outsider frame that can be built, trained, strengthened. The question isn't whether you were born seeing differently. The question is, are you creating the conditions in your life to see more clearly? Read widely. Sit with hard questions longer than feels comfortable. Hang around people who don't think like you. And stop apologizing for the way your mind moves. Direct to camera energy, closing strong, because the world doesn't need more people who agree with what's already there. Final line, land it clean. If this hit different for you, drop a comment and tell me when you saw something before everyone else did. I read every single one, and I'll see you in the next video.